Good morning, Willow. So glad to have you here. Of course, our friend Tom, co-host of the Inside Ride, is there ready to launch some questions as well. Thank you so much for spending this day with us.
Well, thank you for having me, friends.
Yes, indeed. So to everyone listening, Willow, just as a reminder, is a co-founder of Top 20 Training, our social emotional learning company. She's an author, she's an owner, she's a nationally recognized speaker. With that, Willow, what else should people know about you in regards to who you are?
Well, that is what I do for a living. I've been Tom's teaching partner in the past. I've been your business partner for decades now. So that's what I do for a living. I'm also a mom to a couple of kids. I got 2 boys and I have a significant other named Brian. And I'm from Wisconsin. That's a big label that I throw around a lot.
Scotty.
I'm from Wisconsin. I say shopping bag. So yeah, I'm 44. I live in Minnesota now and not Wisconsin. And I work with these guys for a living. And then for fun, I play a lot of golf and I do some community theater when I'm allowed to. So that's kind of what I do.
Awesome. And Tom has the unique benefit. I mean, you and I think you started teaching a year before me. So we were colleagues as teachers. And so
right. I was a social studies teacher. That's how I got into education. You were an English teacher. Tom was a math teacher. And then, we got together.
Yeah. And so you and I knew each other as colleagues, but Tom had this cool benefit of knowing you in a little closer capacity in regards to the origination of this wonderful content. So maybe Tom, you could kick that off.
Yeah. So I'm teaching this top 20 class. We called it TLC. And the second year I ran into you, Willow, and Willow joined me, thank goodness. And we together kind of developed this program with 9th graders as an elective here in St. Paul, Minnesota. But Willow, first question, what attracted you to this? I mean, you're doing Vietnam and Canada, and I think your heart was somewhere else. So what attracted you to this social emotional learning? What was the draw?
Well, I was when this came about, when you asked me if I would be part of this with you, I was really doing kind of my dream job. I love social studies. I love history. Really, I liked teenagers and hanging out and teaching that particular developmental age. Although when I look back, I wasn't much older than them at the time that, I started teaching when I was 21. And so but I was hired to teach social justice classes, which you both know, my passion for equity and social justice. So I actually loved what I was doing at the time. And I continued to do that, even though we did TLC together. But if you'll remember, Tom, our connection started because I had been doing some intentional kindness lessons with my seniors, meaning it's one thing to be kind, but kindness is actually a choice. It's not something that you were born with. It's not organic. It's not fake to choose to be kind and inclusive for other people. And so I was doing some of that, and you had heard that was what I was kind of up to. So it was a very natural switch as to add in social and emotional learning for freshmen, in addition to the social justice stuff I was doing with seniors. Like that to me was a perfect meld of the things that I was passionate about. Because I really, even from a younger age, believed you really did have to do things on purpose to make an impact, even socially.
Yeah, well, and purpose. You always hear parents and teachers saying, "Why don't you listen? Why don't you show me respect? Why don't you know to have some preemptive thinking before you do this?" Well, we have to teach this thing. We have to show.
We don't do that with any other topic. We don't do that in math. We don't expect 9-year-olds to know how to multiply when they show up on the first day of school. We don't do it with driver's ed. We don't do it with any of this stuff. We go, they don't know anything about this. So we should show them step by step and then have them repeat it and practice. That's how all education works, except for the world of like social and emotional intelligence, or at least it used to be that way. Tom has always said we would do integrity in the last 5 minutes if we had it, if we got through chapter 4. But those things can be broken down and taught in a way. It's just the same as public speaking or writing a paragraph or whatever. Listening is a good example. I'm more aware now at my age that everybody starts with at a certain cognitive level or nature nurture level in all of this stuff. And there are certainly some roadblocks to things like listening and focus that get in the way for people, some people more than others. But I've yet to meet a human that can't get better at these social and emotional skills, inside stuff, you know, whatever you want to call it. Some people call it soft skills, which I don't really love, but this idea that this is as achievable for somebody with practice over time as learning how to multiply.
Yeah. Habits. You're a big habit fan. You know, since I joined the team, whenever that was, I don't even remember, something that I would always associate with you as right in your wheelhouse of being able to talk about them effectively is habits, the habits that people have, even just the fact that people don't even understand that they have certain habits. Do you, and even Tom, from when you started TLC, the Thinking, Learning, Communicating class, or as you two were even developing stuff for kids, was there anything in that realm that was kind of a big light bulb moment for kids, that they had these cool realizations in regards to habits or practices?
Yeah, I remember when Willow first came across the hall and wanted to be we had her come in as a guest speaker, quote, that first year. And then we saw there was some chemistry between old guy Tom and young woman Willow, which really filled a gap in our coeducational class. But one of the things we noticed right away was like just handshaking. Willow did the thing on looking people in the eye and shaking hands. We all sat in a circle in the dark and just talked about, approaching kids that were eating lunch alone. I remember that clearly, Willow. And also the first year Willow and I taught together, we had teachers come to us and say, this is strange, but one of your kids said they learned this in your class. They came and said, geez, I feel a little sick today. If my head's down, don't take it personal. I'm just struggling a little bit. And just this awareness the kids were developing, hanging around with us 45 minutes a day, was carrying on in other classrooms. And that's when Willow and I would call each other at night and go, holy smokes, we're onto something here. Let's keep developing. And by the way, and Willow, you'll attest this, we were 2 steps ahead of the kids. We were writing stuff on cocktail napkins or caribou coasters. That was our lesson plan. And we'd go in with a marker, and Willow would do 10 minutes and I'd do 10 minutes. But we're discovering that these habits were, as Willow, as you said, they're easy to change. The kids were responding to this with better habits.
Yeah, I think, well, two things pop up in my head. So the first thing that pops up in my head is that I spent a lot of time having a strong belief of who I was, meaning I am blank. Like, I am a good listener. I am compassionate. I am sarcastic. I am critical. And when I now connect that sentence, even just saying out loud, I am blank, creates like a forever thing. Like, I was born this way, or I can't be anything else than how I assume I am already. And so for me, like, I'm sarcastic. I grew up that way. I'm quick to give a comeback. I'm quick to kind of use my sarcasm, as the phrase we use is slice and dice. Like, I'll say something edgy and sort of mean and everybody will laugh. I grew up kind of doing that all the time. And if you would have asked me 20 years ago, who are you? I would have said, I'm that person. I'm that person at the table that, and what I've come to realize is that I am not any of those things, that those are things I do. And I use this in my work all the time. They're verbs. And we all know when you do something over and over and over again, you get good at it, whether it's good for you or not. And so, was I born sarcastic? No. Do I need to stay sarcastic if it's ruining my relationships, which it did? No. But then it's about being conscious of it and making a choice to be different. And there are certainly, there's a little bit of a gray area, because we all know now that not everybody at all times in their life has the cognitive ability to make change like that. Like, if you have a habit of worrying and that's diagnosable for you, it's not fair to say to somebody, knock it off. But we also know that you could change a habit and over time lessen the degree that you do something. So for me, there's this, and I'll get back to another thing about this in a second, but there's this thing that I am just me and I am who I am. And these are things I do and I can change them over time. The second thing that I really wanted to mention that's been kind of an aha for me and maybe us in the last 5 years is the idea that concept and every concept that we do is different for every person. Meaning I think I think 10 years ago when we were doing this, when I learned it from somebody who came from the same sort of part of the country that I did, came from the same sort of background that I did, had some similar social norms that I did. And so I was he would tell us stuff and I'd go, that's good. I'm going to use that because that works for me. But now what I realize, and then I would go tell other people, you got to do this. This is so good. You're going to love this. This is going to work for you. And after doing this for 20 years, what I found is that's not true. So everybody's in a different place and everybody needs different things. So in our language, and I'm sure you've talked about this already in the podcast, we've always used the idea of my top 20 self, my bottom 80 self, meaning sometimes I'm effective and sometimes I'm ineffective. But what I've learned over the last 5 or 6 years is it's no business of mine to tell either of you two what is effective and what is ineffective for you. That's for you to decide what that is, right? And I want everyone to be more effective in their lives for themselves. But I'm more aware now than ever that that's different for everybody. And so I think my job has changed from saying, do X, Y, and Z, 14-year-old, and your life is going to get better, to more like, could you identify in which ways your X, Y, and Z could make your life better? And then encouraging people to make those choices to just do something different. But that's not really, I'm less about like, this is the way you do this. And more like, this is a whole bunch of ways to do it. This is how it worked for me. Translate that for you and come up with a way that's more effective for you.
And people have to just get to a place where they can be really honest with themselves, right? They have to be at a place where they can look at themselves and say, this is off and I need to change something, tweak it, right?
And by the way, and that's this bigger jump, and we'll get there, I think, but that's the jump to just because I see this as a flaw or a misstep or something I wish was different. We don't even have to put a negative tone on it. Just something I wish I was different. That doesn't have anything to do with my value. Mm-hmm. That every human is in that boat. We just have different things we want to work on to kind of improve for me, not for you, not for what society says I need to be, but for me. To bring more, I don't know, the terms we use are like, well, inside ride, have a better ride in life and be more effective. Everybody could be more effective and enjoy their life more, but those are different for every person in my new way of thinking.
Let's get real though. So you're 44. I've known you for half your life now. When I meet you at 22, you're not this person. You're not Brene Brown. You're not like Lavana. You're not running around you and I have both, it's been well publicized. We're very open about the growth that we had. Mm-hmm. What was this social emotional stuff was great for ninth graders, but it was great for Tom and it was great for Willow too. Mm-hmm. And so walk us through some of the things that you did those first 3 years personally. What hit you? What struck you? You're teaching this stuff to ninth graders, but meanwhile, you're having a rebirth of yourself too. I watched it and I'm going to cry if I talk too much about it.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're talking about, and I've been very open and vulnerable and transparent with folks about that. And it's not like, cause I'm cured now. So I look back on it, but I just had, and I think a lot of people do, I don't think it's particular to me. I just had a whole lot of I'm not good enoughs, but I covered, I think, really well. I mean, you knew me very, very well, Tom, but not everybody knew me as well as you did. So I didn't walk around talking about how, a lot of times I lack self-confidence because I don't feel good enough in X, Y, and Z. And my cover for that, it was to be witty and funny, but also like everybody's best friend and let's meet up and very social, but on the inside, I didn't feel good enough. And what I found is that's true for every human, but I didn't know really that it was deep underneath. I mean, I never talked about this or thought about it or whatever, but when we started getting into this, and specifically because we were working a lot with high schoolers who have plenty of insecurities. And I did too when I was in high school, but I don't think anybody ever asked me to talk about it. But when I dug in a little deeper, what I figured out was I felt completely not good enough for a lot of the same reasons that the students we were working with did. They felt that they were to be valued for being cute, and they were to be valued for being thin, and they were to be valued for how they looked or how they dressed or how they appeared to other people. And what came out for me while we were doing this was I feel completely the same way. And my not good enough was almost all based on growing up as a woman in America, a young girl in America, and feeling judged for the appearance. So it was all outside stuff for me. I felt pretty smart. I felt pretty I knew I could do things. I felt successful on the inside most times, but for me, it was all outside stuff. Like, And so as we dug into this a little bit more, I was like, that's a roadblock for me. That's something that I've been dealing with. And I don't even know that I was conscious to it the whole time until I kind of got into this. And so for me, I loved Top 20 training. Again, it was spoken to me in a language I could understand and came from a place that I didn't have to do a lot of translation to get it. I loved it. But as I would do the steps. So I kind of see this too in people who have never seen our stuff, who see it for the first time. You know, they see it for the first time and they go, I know all this, but I haven't been doing this. I want to do, and it's funny for us because we've done it for so long. It feels like everybody knows this stuff, but I'm still meeting people. Are you still meeting people who go, well, yeah, that would be really helpful to me. When I did that, I don't know how long we did this for, Tom, 3, 4, 5 years. I was doing this stuff that was suggested and it was working better and my relationships were better. I was enjoying life more. My career was better. And then at some point I realized those are all just, I don't know the right word, but for me, it felt like a hamster spinning on a wheel. Yes, I can follow instructions A through F, and then my life will be better. And that's okay, unless you get to a point where for me, the big aha was, I'm Willow, I'm good enough, and my job is to be Willow authentically. And I'm going to succeed and I'm going to fail. And neither of those things have anything to do with my worth. And that for me was like clunk. Now living above and below the line is like big. It's not just acting or faking it till you make it or any of those other kind of like schemy things that people say. For me, it was like, boom, now this makes a bigger impact.
Yeah. And again, if you're listening right now to this podcast and you're thinking, why was I not in this class 20 years ago? Why is my kid not in this class? Kevin will give you some contact stuff at the end of this podcast if you're interested. But I just think back to what teaching this class changed me. Mm-hmm. Teaching this class with Willow changed me. I think teaching this class changed Willow. And we continue on this voyage, and my not good enoughs are well documented if you ever heard me speak. And we're not going to get into those today, but I got a whole team of therapists that would love to have a shot at me. But I'm telling you, this was so powerful for the kids because they're not only watching me, let's say you watch Willow teach Vietnam or whatever. That's not the same as when she's going through a lot of the same things as what the kids were going through. So this thing became powerful because the teachers were literally taking this journey together with the kids. And I think that really shaped the beginnings of this, whatever this is called, a company, an LLC or whatever. But it was a powerful experience. And I thank you for sharing that.
Well, and for kids and adults, we often, the Zig Ziglar quote that we use in our mistakes piece is failure is an event, not a person. Mm-hmm. Adults that are like us, that know a lot of stuff, kids that are well-adjusted, whatever, that know a lot of stuff, there's that hiccup because this world screams that what you do has a sweet little formula for who you are and your worth as a human being. So I, as a human, as I was teaching, hearing about some of the stuff you two were teaching in TLC, trying it with kids, and even then as I stepped in as a role as a trainer for this company, you can go through the steps and you can use the tools, But until you look back at the events, failure is an event, not a person. Until you look at the events that have fueled you with false beliefs, you're better and more effective, but the roots are still there and you're still slowly watering them. I got that slow drip with your hose, just dip, 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 dip. And I think that's why I get so excited that there are people working with kids with this content, because if we can help reroute or water differently or whatever we want to call it. But we have a lot of human beings walking around this planet that feel who they are is totally because of what they've done, and not just because they have a beautiful identity, worth, and purpose as a human to begin with.
Yeah. And so this was another big aha for me. And again, it's not like it's like, oh, so now everything's easy in life because I heard this thing, because it's practice and it's habit, and it's like trying to like remind myself of the truth of who I am, all that. And sometimes, by the way, this language gets cheesy for me, but like, it's just how the phrasing we use to teach it. But for me, like when we first were introduced to Paul, our fourth partner, saying a lot of like, mistakes are wonderful, I was always like, rah, rah, rah. Like, you don't know anything. Like, that's true for you. It's not true for the rest. Like, I have experiences where failures have not been wonderful, whatever. So I finally got to this point where I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm not defined by my failures. Everyone fails. And it's what you do with the failure, all those, bumper sticker stuff. But what really was an aha for me is when I realized that it's also not about my successes, because I think we are encouraged in our culture to say, yeah, but you are worth it because you get to do, you have the skill set to do this, and you get to do that, and you're very good at that, and you're accomplished. And that can be as toxic as thinking that your worth is based on your failures. And so that idea for me, that both are kind of disconnected. Like, there are things I do, and sometimes I do them well, and sometimes I don't. And that's all okay, because I'm still worth it, because I'm a human being and I just exist. But the other thing that has been popping for me a lot in the last couple of years is that some of the choice is taken away by trauma, right? Like, we are more informed now than we ever have been before, that based on things that happened in your childhood, and there are degrees of trauma, but there's not a human that goes without trauma. So what I like what you said was kind of like, let's dig back a little bit and figure out, where did this junk come from? Because then you can release a little bit more of like, not about like, I'm a victim, but it is about connecting that there's a cause and effect.
Right.
And so some of this stuff isn't just because I chose to be sarcastic and edgy and blah, 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 blah. That was my choice. And now I can choose something different. Because if my trauma had been different, I don't know if it's more extreme or less. I don't want to get into judging people's past, but there are times where that just takes you out at the knees, and you don't have choices about doing things different because you're just trying to survive. So I'm even more empathetic now about, hey, everybody's on their own journey, but I think there is a universal theme of, can we at least look back and figure out where this started for you, and especially if it was not if it's not within your responsibility, can we name that what it is and take small steps for ourselves so that we don't have to live in that same trauma?
Well, because how many times have either of you just said to yourself, why do I do that? Why do I react that way? Why do I snap over little things? Why? And until you go back and look at it, you just stuck with the, why am I being that way? And I've taken a serious look at both my parents have passed away, so I can't ask anyone any questions about my childhood anymore. But when I dig back and look at little moments, you at least have a level of understanding of what has shaped you, in good and bad, and it helps you. It's almost like a little catalyst for how you can shift to be more effective in your moment in that time.
Right. And the three of us, and this should be stated anytime we're talking about this publicly, the three of us are not trained in psychoanalytic therapy. This is not our bag. We talk about things like social and emotional intelligence. Mental health is not our expertise. We do not have the license to talk about this stuff, but each one of us has taken our own personal journey within this world. And I do think that's where it's at. I mean, it's just about this idea of like, can we say cause and effect? This is why this has happened to me, not what is wrong with me. That's not our phrase either. That's Oprah, by the way. And she got it from somebody else. I'm almost positive. But the idea is, it's not what's wrong with me and what needs to be fixed. It's this is what's happened to me. So it makes some pretty logical sense that this is the effect based on that cause. And what do I have within my control to make some changes?
Hey, the roadmap is what you're talking about. Is if you hang out with us and our top 20 social emotional, we're trying to offer you a roadmap to be happier, healthier, and more effective. And the cool part is that we can share our road, but yours is going to be different, like Willow's saying. And I really want to go back to Willow's point about not good enough as far as young females in our culture right now. This is that's why we really wanted to emphasize what Willow's talking about for you women listening out there, for anybody raising daughters or your granddaughter. Right now in our culture, it's never been more critical to have this for our young women. So Willow, if you could talk about that for a minute, this whole idea of not good enough for our young women who are growing up with these terrible messages about physical beauty,
Yeah. Well, I'll go one step farther. Is that I think that was something that I assumed to be true 20 years ago when we were doing this. Like, oh my gosh, I've got to talk. I should be honest about the idea that I don't feel good enough because I look at magazine articles and they don't seem to reflect, they don't look like me. So I must not be good enough. And I think that was problematic. And here's why. It's because now I'm raising one teenage boy and one pre-teenage boy. And it is this is not as connected to gender for me as it maybe used to be. Also, we're in a place in this country now that we realize that gender is much more fluid and on a spectrum than we ever did before. So what I'm going to say is 20 years later, I think all young people are swimming in a aquarium of not good enough. And it's probably up to each young person to kind of, if they can get there earlier, define in which category or genre they have adopted, right? Because I think it becomes too limiting to say, girls need to do this and boys need to do that in a world now where we know all this stuff is being thrown at all of them and they're all letting it soak in differently. And it doesn't mean that it's still toxic, but it's different for everybody. Because my kids are, my kids identify as male and they have plenty of not good enoughs, but they come in like a different package. I should say this, my kids have not good enoughs that come in their own packages. And I don't know that has as much to do with gender as maybe I used to think about it. But I do agree if they're getting a constant message that, and this has always been, you guys are so probably sick of hearing me say it, but I'm just of the belief that all of that not good enough messaging from parents, society, friends, ads, I think it's all based on consumption and money. That's my thing. I think jeans don't go out of style. There's nothing in the universe that says this is no longer in style. Companies decide they need everybody to buy a new style, so they change it. Magazine ads use fake eyelashes to advertise mascara to women. So unless you have fake eyelashes, you're never going to look like that ad. But that's the way of saying you're not good enough. Buy our stuff. And you will be. And my boys are just as affected by commercial stuff like that as anybody else is.
Sure. Willow, so you've long since left the classroom. You still do some direct work with students, but you're speaking all over the country. Mm-hmm. You're speaking for districts, schools, conferences, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
What do you, and from what you are
really special on this podcast, by the way. I mean, like we're just plumbers. People just hire us because they're that's all we are.
You're very special.
Thing I do, but okay. Yes, Kevin.
But so there's this spectrum of stuff you speak about. You speak about the inner life with your thinking. You speak about mistake making. You speak about seeing the world a certain way with the frame. You speak about engagement, disengagement. What is there something that is your favorite, for lack of a better word, or maybe it's highly resonating, or what's the thing that when you're about to launch into it with a group that you really dig in and you get a lot back from people because it's ringing the bell?
Zest? Are you looking for some zesty stuff, like the stuff that that just I get buzzed about.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, okay, so this I'm not good enough stuff. And really, by the way, the flip of the coin is to call it I am good enough, and here's why. That stuff for me is always going to be like what I want to do most, but I don't think that's a good thing to start on with folks. Like I don't, you know,
Crack them open right
this
away.
is going to be judgmental, and I'm just going to label it judgmental. But sometimes when you meet people and they just spill everything they got in the first 30 seconds, I'm always like a little bit like, hey, this is too much for me to handle right in the moment. Like I want it. A vulnerability is great. Transparency is great, but like, give me 11 minutes to know you before I get in. Sure. And I feel like that's true in the world of speaking. Like, even though there can be 800 people in the crowd, there's a relationship between you and this and the audience. Even when I'm doing a lot of the speaking, I've said this for years. My attempt is to make eye contact with everybody in the crowd at all times, because that's an engaging piece. And so I have to, for me, I'm not good enough is a big chunk. And I think you got to get through some other stuff first. They got to get to know you, to know that, you know, why, you know, that you're in for the right reason, whatever. There's a trust level. So that what comes down the line. The thing that I like to do the first time I'm with everybody that gives me the most zest would not come as a surprise to you, and that's keep your day. So for me, it all comes down to the outside world is going to constantly throw you things you don't like. That's called being an adult human. We call them invitations. You know, there's things that will invite you to lose it, basically. Curveballs that will invite you to lose it and give away your day. And in my aha moment 18 years ago was, oh my gosh, every single human has a first day on the planet where they open up their eyes and it's their first universe experience. Mine was August 13th, 1976. Then I got a second, a third, a fourth. Not everybody does, but I did. You guys did. And now I'm on day X. And for me, the aha moment is there's going to be a last day. And I actually have no idea when it is, nor does anybody. So I don't know how many days I have left. And so they're really valuable. So I don't want to give it away for stupid stuff. I don't want to give it away for things outside of my control whenever I can. So traffic, rained on a day that I have a golf tournament. No, I'm not going to like go nutty over it. My kids won't put on their socks and shoes was my big one when I was a younger mom. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not going to lose it over that, because the universe will send you much bigger ticket items, which you both know I've been sent, you've been sent, we've been spent over the years. And that's kind of like, you can freak out and lose your day and give it away and over those bigger things, but not the smaller things.
And you're not saying just be happy.
No, because that's ridiculous. But by the way, I don't think that happiness should also be something that we go, oh, happiness, like so uncool to talk about. Because like, what else is the point, right? Like, I've been here on the earth 44 years. My only goal is to enjoy as many days as I possibly can before it's over. And I don't think that's like particularly cheesy but we lose that because there's this cultural value on toughness and grit. Yep. And it's not that I don't think we need to deal with adversity or whatever, we do, but there's this like it's soft to be happy, where I think that's like the end goal. It doesn't have to be cheesy. Like, I want to enjoy my life. I want to collect as many experiences of pure joy so I can get my hands on, and then it's all over. So I'm cool with that, but there's this acknowledgement that it can't be like that every day of your life. I don't know anybody that's like that every day of their life. And if it is, again, judgment alert, I think they're lying, because life is tough. But I'd rather save the real hard days for when the real hard stuff hits, and not be so defeated for little stuff, you know? So I want to keep my day, hold on to my day, don't give it away. And then the real overwhelming umbrella there is it's my day to give away or keep, which I had no idea, but I just thought whatever happened in the outside world made me go nutty, you know?
Yeah. But traffic jam, therefore your day's gone. And you're
right.
No.
And I think that happens at a certain level, loss, abuse, you know, chronic negativity around you. Like, I think you hit that and you go, I don't have any control anymore because I've suffered enough under this. But then there's like 80% of the stuff that is not that big of a deal. You know, she looked at me funny. Oh, okay.
Right.
But it's up to me to just go, I don't care. The only thing I really have control over is whether I care or not about things. And I think for a lot of years, I cared about stuff that was not in my best interest to care about.
Yeah,
Mhm.
teachers listen. You don't have to go nuts when the Xerox machine jams, is what Willow saying. No, we don't love it. Hey, in the interest of time, I want to ask Willow one more question. But before I say that, 6 weeks from now, we're going to have Willow back because this conversation is too rich to end. But we're going to make you tune in again in late July. We're going to do this again. Willow, let's say you're a Secretary of Education in this country for a day. What's one thing you would change in American education, like right now? And then we'll let you go.
Whoa,
Boy,
Thomas.
Well,
boy.
hey, are we going there? Going there? Come on.
Yes.
What would
I
you think
guess.
about schools?
T.
Well,
Cody
okay.
throwing heat.
Oh, heat. Here we go. Well, we work in schools, so we have our own opinions. So I will give you my opinion. It doesn't mean that, well, it's my opinion. I think that we are doing a disservice to the idea of good enough growth, true learning, when we take the experience of 180 days for a kid and we add that up, and the equals line is whatever score you got on a state test.
Mhm.
Makes absolutely no sense to me. And then to go even further, we use whatever that score was collectively for all the kids in the building to then put a grade on a school. And for me, that is as counterintuitive to the world of growth and learning that we could possibly. It's just, for me, it's so it's malpractice.
Sure.
I think that we've got, because there are schools that I know of that have received failing grades or on probation. You know, these are all words that we use, by the way, in a punishment society.
Right.
We have those. I'd like any educator in America to tell me if they think that those teachers aren't working just as hard as any school that's getting a B+.
Yep.
We've lost our minds a little bit, I believe, in the way that we are labeling kids, schools, and teachers.
Love it.
Thank you. I'm voting for you. Hey, Willow, thanks for being Willow. Thanks for being on with us today. Thanks for everything we've shared over these last 2 decades. I think you've had a profound impact on our audience today, and I want to thank you for that.
Well, I care for you greatly, Tom Cody.
You don't give
I
much
also care for you
crap
greatly.
about Kevin. Yeah.
No.
Where's
I
the
love you
care
guys.
for Kev?
This is fun. I'm glad you guys are doing this kind of stuff, reaching out in new ways, and I'm proud of all the work that you're doing, and rah rah to you, friends.
Here we go. It's all mission. Thanks so much, Willow.
See you later.
See you. Yeah, wow. People listening out there in podcast land, you know, maybe now what a powerful experience it's been to go through this ride with our company, with our work with Willow. Kev, what's your takeaway?
You know, it's super hard because I'm a note taker. I have a million notes, and I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to pick the one that kind of resonated in the moment. And when I asked her about when she's speaking, what gives her some zest and zeal, and she just mentioned eye contact, and it's interesting she said that because I was talking to my brother-in-law about that the other day, and he just referenced a White Zombie concert he saw back in the 90s, and the bass player just shreds on the bass, but makes eye contact for like 3 seconds with everyone in the crowd up front. And he said it was such a surreal experience because he said it was just mind blowing. But to me, it's because that person made him feel like he mattered. And I think Willow does that. That's why she's so successful. She makes everyone in the room feel like they matter in a number of different ways, through story, through resonance, but eye contact and that connection is huge. And I think human connection is so important because we just had a year with a lack of it. And I'm just reminded, I'm glad she reminded me the power of connection through something as small as eye contact. So that was really big for me to hear that. What about you?
Well, mine is really the same thing, the connection, but I keep going back to 20 years ago in the classroom. There's a 9th grade girl, there's a 9th grade boy sitting in there, and listening to my friend Willow talk about her not good enough made the connection. It made the stuff so real. It's not just a class. This isn't a class where we're teaching you things. It's us offering our stories, Willow in particular, and other people taking those outsides and then having that insight of, wow, I could be happier. I could accept myself. So to me, the connection that she makes is she opens herself up and she offers, this is my journey. And a lot of people want to get on that same train
Hmm.
once they see that she's taking that ride. So
Cool.
beautiful.
Awesome. Glad we had her. We'll have her on again, as you mentioned. And Tom, it's always a pleasure navigating conversations with you, bud.
Yeah, and we don't know when our next one's coming, but keep an eye on social media. Follow us on Twitter. Hit us on our Facebook page. Stay tuned. We still got dates in August if you're interested in trainings. We're getting back out there. I got a couple of airline reservations. It's time to revisit our friends in some schools. So hopefully see some of you down the road.
That's it. All right, buddy. Take care.
Bye.